What's up, everybody? We're back with another episode of the Microcast, and I'm really excited to have Coach Zoë Rom back in the studio.
Yeah, it's been a while since we potted.
I know, it's been too
Oh
long.
my gosh, it's like we don't even talk anymore.
I did 3 episodes with not random people, but
Not
they weren't
total
you.
randos.
They weren't
Yeah.
you.
Well, there's no replacing me, so
No,
respect to the homies that we've had on the pod since I've been out doing other things.
Big shoes to fill.
I have huge feet, so like for a lady, freaking like TJ and I wear the same size shoe.
Almost.
Pretty darn close. I literally wear your old ski boots.
Yeah, but you're swimming in those things.
No,
They're
it feels
big on
pretty
you.
good.
Really?
Yeah, it feels good.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I know.
I do wear a very
It's
small
upsetting.
ski boot.
He has petite feet. He has which is, I feel that's why
Petite. I wear
you
a
have
size
petite feet.
10. It's not that
You don't wear
small.
a size 10.
I do.
No, you don't.
I do.
You're hedging. That's like
I'm
a
not.
Tinder 10. Like on Tinder, you say you wear size 10.
No. I'm like a Tinder 11 for sure. I need,
Dude,
yeah,
that
9
would
to
be
10, 9 to 10, depending.
savage to get on Tinder and brag about your foot size. Anyway, clearly it's been a while since we potted. I'm a little rusty, but this week's gonna be super fun because we're taking a deep dive into our training for this upcoming race season. We're doing kind of a race swap, talking about what I learned at Western States that TJ might do and what he learned at Leadville that I might do or ignore and learn the hard way. And then we're going to talk about what athletes themselves should focus on when they've mastered the big stuff like consistent training, good sleep, nutrition, fueling, stuff like that. But before we get to all of that fun stuff and start sharing foot pics, let's start with some hot or not topics.
Yeah, let's get into it. We had an athlete email in this week asking about Omius headbands. And forgive me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Omius, Omius, whatever they are, it's a headband, and they make
sounds
hats.
Fake as hell.
They make hats too. It's a.
Can I Google? I'm gonna Google in real time. You describe what it is.
All right. Well, it's basically a cooling hat that you wear. It's also a headband application.
Oh my god!
That you wear around your head to help you keep cool.
Okay, so I've never seen one of these before. What it looks like to me is if you took one of those ska belts that, like, you know, guys
punk
wear
rock
ska,
style.
like a punk rock, with like the studs,
with the
like
studded diamonds
from Vans Warped Tour, and if you made a headband for the future out of that.
It's wild looking.
Dude, this is crazy.
And they're expensive.
Oh my gosh, this thing is $200.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so tell
crazy.
me about this expensive ska headband.
Well, the reviews here on the feed are...
Look at that guy.
Wow.
He looks like he's trail running in the future.
He's performing well. That's all I have to say. That is a great picture.
Yeah.
The reviews here of this product are stellar. I see 3 5-star reviews up front. Not sure what. There's only 3 reviews actually on this website, so I don't know about the efficacy of these reviews. But basically the background of this technology is essentially it amplifies evaporative cooling. And evaporative cooling is something that we've actually talked a little bit about in past episodes on this podcast, where we've gotten into cooling techniques for races that are really hot. And evaporative cooling basically is the process that your body actually does this naturally, where your body pulls heat from your core out through your skin. And it transforms basically the water within your body through sweating, sweat pools at your skin, and it turns that liquid into gas. In that process, it pulls the heat out.
Okay.
So that's why it's really important. Like, that's why people get wet. You know, they get wet during hot races.
Right. So I guess my question is, evaporative cooling for a lot of us happens for free.
Yes, it does.
What is the appeal of a $200 Epic headband?
It says on the website that you get 5 times more surface area for that evaporation to take place. And if you keep the product wet, it will continue to create evaporative cooling.
Devil's advocate, same with a bandana.
Right, or sleeves.
Right.
Athletes pack sleeves with ice, or they dip sleeves. They dip their whole bodies in bodies of water during races. But apparently this technology amplifies basically something that your body already does and is usually pretty efficient at, especially if you've done any heat training or prep for a hot race, this is a byproduct of training.
Right.
This is a training adaptation. The fitter you get, the better you're going to get at evaporative cooling. So it's not like something we necessarily need to hack.
Right. Yeah, because like I don't know if paying $200 to look like a steampunk unicorn is really worth it when presumably you could get most of the way with a wet bandana and some solid training. Have you seen any research about the efficacy of these, or have you heard of anyone that uses this? Or
well, I did hear that our friend past microcast, not a host, but he guest on the pod, Sean Van Horn does own one of these, and I believe he could, maybe if he's listening, he'll correct me via text later that no, it does not work. But he told me that he felt like it actually helped. Can't remember what event he used it at.
Well, you heard it here first. One guy said he felt like it maybe helped.
Well, I'm gonna go not hot on this.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think the price tag for the technology, I looked at their website. They didn't have I will be in full disclosure. I gave it a 10-minute look on the website because I'd never heard of this technology. And I looked to see if they cited any research on there. And I did not see that.
Not even like an attempt at like sort of faking the research like a lot of, sort of startup-y things will do.
I did not see that. I just, they have claims like 5 times more surface area for evaporation, but it sits on your head and how could that be 5 times more of the surface area of your body?
Right.
So that I'm kind of, I don't know.
Not feeling it. Remains to be seen.
It remains to be seen. I think my thing on this is anything that an athlete uses that helps them lower their perceived exertion is going to be beneficial. So if you're an athlete who has this technology and you feel like, yeah, this really works for me, like it makes me feel so much better. Okay. Like for you, it's hot and use it because I think that's an advantage. Especially when we think about the mental aspects of doing hard things, if we can lower our perceived exertion, that's really powerful.
You could also mail me a check for $200 and I'll tell you you're heat adapted. And if you believe in yourself, that could have the same effect.
You know what? Belief is a very powerful thing. The power of the placebo effect is amazing.
I'm just saying. Yeah, exactly.
It's a real thing.
If what the folks want is a placebo, like we should tap that market.
I don't want to go too much into the weeds on this.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But
I'm just
say,
mind blown by a $200 headband.
I will say there are other companies out there. I have actually, before Leadville, I received a bunch of products to try out that we were going to possibly consider branding, microcosm branding on there. That were claiming to be helpful with cooling, and that it's a company that works with UPS and other kind of like on the go big businesses where they're in hot warehouses.
And how different is delivering packages from ultra running? Truly,
they are. Well, I would say that's an ultra level job.
That's what I'm saying. Is I'm like, how different is it really?
So
I'm just shuffling around in shorts, moving stuff around.
The claims were the same.
Yeah.
That if basically the cooling effect is driven solely by water evaporation and it will continue indefinitely as long as you can keep those cooling pieces wet and air flows across them. And that's like kind of, I'm like, that's kind of the same way that our bodies work. But I did try these out, different sleeves, kind of towels and hats. Cool. I have to be honest, I didn't notice a huge difference. That's my personal kind of like testimonial.
Yeah.
But it also was not this exact product.
Right.
So, that caveat on that.
Yeah. I feel like, I think that typically when there is a product that is head and shoulders above the rest, a lot of times we'll hear about it and it won't be some like weird secret. But also a lot of things that claim to be the like head and shoulders above the rest, everyone's using it. There can also be a lot of like the emperor has no clothes.
Right. So
Looking at you, powdered greens.
Right. Right. And so if anybody has seen a good study on this, I'd love to check it out. I keep an open mind because I love to, adapt and adopt new technology.
Yeah, I personally can't wait to rock this in the club.
Right.
It's very shiny.
It does look like club attire.
It looks like something you'd wear to a rave.
All right. 10 minutes later, let's move on. Strava segments, hot or not?
Ooh, I'm gonna say very hot. Should it be the end all be all of your self-worth? Probably not. That's worth investigating. Should you spend a significant portion of your life thinking of funny titles for Strava segments? Abso-fucking-lutely. I personally have taken it upon myself to segment out my typical run so that when I run in a clockwise fashion, my favorite route, it gives me the lyrics to the bridge of Smash Mouth's All-Star. And that personally really connects, resonates with me, and motivates me in a profound way that nothing else can.
Wow. And I thought you were going to use this as a way to measure your progress in some kind of linear fashion as an athlete has absolutely no connection to
no
performance.
Connection. I just like Smash Mouth.
Wow.
Strava is delightful. I had years ago, actually, I named a segment up on one of our favorite long run routes called the Catherine Store Loop, which is sort of like a in the hills above Carbondale. I named this really long, like the full lollipop, which is like 16 miles. I named the segment "I'm 100% that bitch." Dear friend and coach Zach Russell went out and ran it and like screenshotted it, put it on Instagram. It was like, I don't know who named the segment, but you're the best. And I was like, it's me. And thank you. I am the best.
Yeah.
I live for naming Strava segments in a way that people years back will come to appreciate the effort and work that I put into what I consider one of my best art forms.
For a town of 7,000 people, I think you have a strong claim to the segments here, at least in naming them.
Yeah.
I'm not into Strava segments, as it probably isn't surprising for people who know me. It's nice if you're out there and maybe you have a good day and you get a trophy.
Yeah.
But honestly, the nuts and bolts of your training, which we're going to chat about a lot on this episode, is just like, who gives a shit? That's kind of my attitude about it.
I mean, obviously we're adults and who gives a shit, but also I feel good and special when I get a trophy.
I think we need to check where our validation comes from.
I mean, it's not the only thing I have in my life. It is just a thing,
Well, I can tell you.
I don't know why. I don't know where it comes from. I'm just telling you that I feel good and special when I get a trophy.
If you're out there poaching segments, it's your
job. I'm very process oriented about it, like it only feels good to me if it happens organically and by accident, Yeah.
Okay. I like that. That's healthy.
Yeah.
It's a good way to think about it. I do like seeing, who runs certain zones, and I like it for the kind of like community and social aspect of just like, oh, who's out here on these random bike paths around a golf course? Oh, you are cool. Like, who else is out there? But yeah, I'm not about to be out there like trying to snipe segments. Mm-hmm. I know other people who are into that. That's great for them. Not my jam.
No. Yep. You do you, but also if that's what you're doing, maybe check yourself. And therapy is also a cool thing you can do that will make you feel better about yourself.
Okay, I feel like you took that to the extreme.
I'm just saying, like, if it's all you have,
you can snag segments.
Yes, you can snag segments without like needing to. Yes, I'm not saying that like if you get a set like. I mean, you're
definitely gonna get canceled for that one.
No, I'm not. Glass houses and stones and whatnot. Like I just said on the pod, on the record, that I feel good inside when I do this. If it's the only thing that makes you feel good inside, or if it's like driving decision making, that's not good.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you how I feel.
All right, tell me how you feel about post-run beers.
Man,
ruffle some feathers today.
And I know we're going to talk about this later. And this is something I feel like total tone shift from Smash Mouth to Smashing Beers. But this is something that my sort of relationship to has changed a lot in the past 3 years. And I'm going to have to give it a not hot.
I give it a not hot too, as somebody who really loved post ski beers,
Yeah.
post work beers, post pretty much anything.
Post beer.
Beers for about 90% of my life.
Yeah. Since you were a young child.
Since I was about 13. I go not hot on these things because the more I understand how alcohol plays a role in my life and in the lives of the athletes I've had the privilege to coach, I see it as a downer.
It's not helping anyone. I'll tell you that.
When you put something in your body that is literally a depressant.
Yeah.
It lowers your emotional state in a given moment. And I think, you know what, like after a run, you're stoked, you're feeling good with your friends. Try to like live in that energy for a while. Don't drink a beer because that's going to bring you down, and like you want to raise your floor.
Yeah, I think, for me,
live in that space.
I used to love a good post-run beer. Now I love a post-run NA beer. Huge fan, like, because I understand the importance of that ritual. And I actually, something that I've really found that has been helpful for me mentally and emotionally is extending the relationships I've made through running into my normal life, so that like people that used to just be running friends are now like actual life friends, and that we have something to do that's not just working out together. And I think sometimes initially in those relationships, alcohol was the bridge. It was like a lowest common denominator of like, you like running, great, we can get a beer together. And I have found that lo and behold, we can actually not use that tool as a bridge for our relationships anymore. And so I would just, and again, like all of the research is indicating to alcohol being really detrimental to recovery, really not a great thing for mental health. So I would say post-run alcoholic beer, no good, not hot. I would say post-run, having another fun, tasty NA beverage that feels fun and exciting and like connective to you, that's fucking rad. Find that for you. Because like a lot of times Kylie and I will, Coach Kylie and my running partner will get an NA beer, or we'll do a mocktail to close out our runs. And so that way we still have that fun moment of ritual and connection to like have that second of release of like, whoa, we did a hard thing. Let's celebrate. And not wanting to lean on alcohol to have that feeling.
I agree. Lean into community and really be there and feel what you feel and enjoy that experience, and not put something on it that may
limit
that experience,
that limits your ability to recover in every aspect. There's actually, I would encourage folks to go listen. TJ's heard me say this 3 times today already. I'm so sorry. To listen to Dylan Bowman's recent Free Trail podcast with Justin Grunwald, where he refers to drinking alcohol as like reverse doping yourself.
Yeah.
Like it's like one of the most immediate things you can do to just kneecap yourself from a performance standpoint.
So what do you think about track workouts? Hot or not?
Ooh, I love a track workout. I should go do more workouts on the track. They don't plow our track in the winter, which is kind of tough. And they actually teach children to cross country ski on it, which is very cute, but not good for track workouts. I like it. I think it's something that like for athletes really wanting to, who maybe like, we have a pretty good bike path to run on the winter, so it's not a huge concern. Track workouts can really nicely sort of isolate the effort so that you can just focus on effort and not like going over hills or like changing direction or navigating. So I think I wouldn't recommend doing, maybe a few workouts on the track for trail and ultra athletes. I think it's a good tool to have in your tool belt. I don't think you need to do it all the time. I think it can be great for like, especially 1 to 2 minute repeats. For repeats that are 3 to 5 minutes, like honestly get some more interesting terrain in there, and that can be a useful adaptation as well. You don't need to do every workout on the track. I think it's like I'm like a cautious hot on it.
Okay, all right. Middle
ground. Hot.
Yeah. I think it's all about your relationship to running. If you're going to the track in order to try to get a little more free speed or to try to hammer harder, check yourself there. Track can be a great tool, as you mentioned, but I've also seen athletes way overdo it.
Yeah, for sure.
There, which isn't good for training. So
having stressies not good for training.
No, and I think, people get on the track, especially trail runners, and they're like, this feels, racy. Let's go.
Yeah.
And, that's a great way to overdo it in your workout.
Yeah. Pull a hammy.
Oof. All right. Let's talk training, racing. What's coming up?
Yeah. So you're training for Western States.
Yes.
How's it going?
Well, there's always the looming thought that I won't get pulled from the wait list until the night before the race.
Well, it still I mean, I don't know.
So there's always that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going well.
Worst case scenario, you'll have just spent a ton of time and money investing in something that would have been really cool.
Yes, thousands of dollars in Airbnb and soon airline tickets for a race that I'm slowly getting closer to.
Where are you on the wait list now?
Haven't looked in a while, to be honest. The last time I looked, there was I was 20th.
Yeah.
Moved up 6
there's
spots.
Like no way.
But what I did look, I spent some time about a month ago looking at when folks usually around my number on the wait list got the call, and it wasn't until May.
Yeah.
So I'm just, I'm thinking May, that's when I'm going to get the call. But hey, I'm not waiting till May to start the training. No, the training is in full effect.
Yeah.
Running Lake Sonoma.
Yeah.
In about 7 weeks. So that'll be the first race of the season.
This is a really big race for you. It's also the earliest season 100 you've ever done. What's different about your training for this race versus what you've done for past races like Leadville?
That's a good question. I think not a whole lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think there's a slight leveling up that happens through the years as you become a more experienced athlete. There have been some weeks where I've done 3 workouts a week, which is something that's new for me. Yeah. Very Norwegian. Very proud of that. Getting into my roots there.
Oh my gosh, we're doing saunas. We're doing 3 workouts. Jacob Ingridson in the house.
Yeah. And that's been cool. It's, tested me a little bit. I think the biggest change that I am making to my training is I'm working with Coach Kylie on the nutrition side. Because my nutrition game at Leadville, I thought it was really sound.
Right.
It was tried and true over many years. And it's still, I feel like there was still some gaps there. I am definitely trying to come around to the idea of having more real food options.
Right.
So this is something that I'm working on now.
I think this is very special. Actually, can you tell the folks at home what you're doing to train for this?
Well, I'm eating Pop-Tarts now.
How and where?
Well, I've been doing that on the treadmill.
But
that's because it's been crappy outside.
Is straight up going to the gym, pounding out 2-hour long runs and eating Pop-Tarts on the treadmill. Just unreal stuff, you guys.
Listen, for what it's worth, I started with Fig Newtons.
Yeah.
And those are the absolute worst.
Yeah, it's not good. They're not good.
Can eat those. They're so dry.
They taste like if you could make a cookie out of celibacy, it would be a Fig Newton.
Fig Newtons are not fun.
They're not fun.
You know what's fun? Pop-Tarts.
Pop-Tarts. But I think that, again, if I knew that someone I was racing was just fucking pounding toaster pastries on the treadie, I'd be like, that's gonna be a tough person to beat.
370 calories.
I know, dude. That's epic.
It's pretty sweet.
That's epic.
Yeah. And
you're just really you're really moving your gastrointestinal Overton window.
They sit well. I have to admit, they're going pretty well for me.
And you're doing this while doing efforts.
Yeah.
You're running hard.
Workouts
on the treadmill and eating Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
It's just fucking cool, dude. It's so funny.
I'm trying to figure out a way to carry the Pop-Tart because Kylie's got me doing this thing where you do 1 hour sports nutrition, 1 hour real food, 1 hour, and you rotate. And, this time of year.
She's a genius.
Yeah. It's a good way to practice. But, this time of year, I'm not doing super long runs. I think last weekend it was 240 or something.
A Pop-Tart bandolier.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you need to have something like that because
a Pop-Tart quiver.
You don't want them to smash.
No, you don't want them smashed because then you're losing the good stuff.
Right, all those good calories.
That satisfying mouthfeel too of biting into the pastry.
Yep.
And it being handheld and not something that you're snorting off a key.
I like that. The other thing is I've had issues.
So, okay, I'm sorry.
You're
I won't
obsessed
linger
with
on
this.
I'm obsessed with
Wow.
What kind of Pop-Tart are we talking here?
Cherry.
Cherry.
Yeah.
And that's your, have you
Frosted.
tried other? Is this the one?
Cherry is good.
This is
Cherry is
good?
very
Okay.
good. I don't need to go.
Tart cherry? Are there
No, it's normal.
anti-inflammatory?
It's not tart cherry.
Okay.
That would be something. Actually, I'm going to ask them if they could
Performance
make that
pastries.
performance.
Let's just quit coaching and make performance pastries.
Well, there are people who make handmade Pop-Tarts, and I look at those and I'm like, wow, that must take a lot of time.
Yeah, I know. And I'm like, I'm going to eat that in 40 seconds.
The other thing I'm doing is trying to figure out what is going on with some of my micronutrient. I've got some stuff going on. I've had a lot of blood tests.
Did I hear you were going to maybe send your poop to Kylie?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, this is exciting.
I'm glad that
this is what I've always wanted out of our adult friendships.
I know. I was hoping she would get like a bag at her front door. But yeah, I'm having issues absorbing iron. Not iron, D.
D. Huh.
And it's very low. And so there's some worry around, it's not great for bone health. Although I've had low vitamin D levels for many, many years now. But adulthood, I'm just getting around to trying to figure this out. We've done a couple different things. Did a thyroid test. And that was all good, but I was super nervous about that. I was like, man, like, what am I? Thyroid issues?
Yeah.
Not very old. But yeah, I guess we're gonna analyze the microbiome and see if there's some stuff going on there that's impacting absorption. I also, as a plant-based athlete, eat a lot of fiber. That can be an issue with absorbing things like D, iron, other micronutrients. So trying to cut back a little bit on the salads. I'm a huge salad guy.
I know. Yeah, we love a salad around here.
I'm like not eating salads anymore, and it's weird. I miss greens.
Yeah, I know. I miss you making me salads.
I have
frankly,
to get athletic greens.
No. Ugh.
But
death before. Honestly, I have tried that stuff, and it tastes like drinking out of Satan's fish tank.
Oof.
It's gross.
I'm not into it.
No.
It's also way too expensive.
It's $90 of gross.
Is it really that much?
It's like snorting a ficus tree every day.
Pop-Tarts on the treadmill sounds so much
not validated by science, right? And this is
all right.
Scotty Fauble eats Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, I don't know who that is, but I bet you he's
awesome. A top marathoner who DNF'd the trials.
Yeah, he should have had another Pop-Tart.
He should have had an extra Pop-Tart. He only had 3. Anyway, okay, great. So you're really diving into your nutrition and like finessing some of the small things that can end up being big when you're sort of playing on the edge of your potential here.
Yeah, I think so too, right? Like eventually you have to get into the minutia of all of this. Like you can't we'll talk a little bit about this stuff in the next segment, but you kind of have to go deeper because at a certain point
you're not going to compete at Western States by just running 5 times a week and sleeping enough.
Well, you could finish on that formula.
You could definitely finish, but I think it's more. You could also DNF on that formula for sure. You could DNF on any formula. It's the amazing thing about DNFs.
I think hopefully the Pop-Tart is going to help me not DNF.
That's true. Yes, that's our DNF.
Maybe I'm going to try mashed potatoes on the treadmill soon if we don't get some good weather on a Saturday.
Yeah. Damn. I wonder what other people think of you like when they see just like this super fit dude like pounding pastries at like 6-minute pace.
I mean, sometimes at the end of these workouts, I get a little pumped up because they're pretty hard and like I'm efforting, and then there's just like 65-year-olds around.
I know,
me.
Because
I have like 5 flasks. I'm like sweating everywhere.
Just like shirts off,
on the ground.
Just like sprinkles all in your chest hair.
They hate when I take my shirt off. I get so many stares. But I run out of shirts. It just gets too hot in there. I would say the benefit of training a couple days a week on the treadmill is that I don't know what it is about older folks. They like it hot.
Yeah, they do.
And it is like 70 plus degrees and 70 plus % humidity in the gym. So it's heat
down
training
to fighting weight.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm applying right now from your Western States into my training.
Yeah, I'm curious if there was anything, peace and love towards my incredible Western States performance that ended at Green Gate. Was there anything you were like, I'm going to do that exactly the same, way to go? Or was there anything you were like, we're learning and we're growing and we're not doing that again.
I think the thing that I'm thinking about most is that don't underestimate how hard that course is.
Yeah.
Like it suits my skill set. The heat is a kind of a question. I've had to work pretty hard at getting better in the heat.
But again, it was hotter this year at Leadville than it was at Western States. So like you've done a hot 100.
Yes, and I threw up a lot.
You did throw up a lot.
I threw up a lot. I think that was the altitude. I don't.
But
think
if you
that
can
was
puke and rally, that's an incredible 100-mile lesson.
Sure. I think some folks, and I've coached a bunch of people for Western at this point, underestimate because they see the profile. It's a downhill race. I think they underestimate sometimes how hard the course is. And I saw it beat you up a little bit in surprising ways, even after some pretty focused training, especially with your downhill running and preparing the quads. So I've got that in the back of my head.
Yeah, I think, the thing I would do differently is preparing for technical downhills. I was running a lot on ski resorts because I was like, I'm just going to pound the quads and like go run down roads on ski or like these like sort of like gravel roads. And I didn't account for as much of the sort of like eccentric with braking motion because like when you're running technical downhills, it's a different form than when you're running smooth downhills. And it really does break you down in a different way.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that. And I've been looking at Boy Scout.
Yeah.
Which has got a pretty sweet technical downhill. And it's like usually the first thing besides Red Hill that'll open up. But it has a much longer, steeper downhill than Red Hill.
Yeah.
And it's like right on my walk into the gym when I get on the treadmill. So when I do my tread hills, I'm like, all right, this is preparing me to run, hopefully be able to run up that, which has always been a really hard segment. And then even more importantly, I'm like, when is this thing going to dry out? Because we need to get some loading on the quads done.
Yeah. Yeah. I also feel like we learned a lot how to cooling which like you've put these things into practice. Like it's not like it'll be the first time you're doing any of these things, but we did learn how to effectively cool during races.
Was the Omius hat, I believe.
Yeah, the secret was a $200 headband.
Ice, man. Ice.
That looks like something Dave Grohl wore 15 years ago. That's interesting. Cool. So
what about you? What's going on with Leadville? This is a true race swap. I literally ran Leadville a couple months ago. It feels like still
recovering. No, you're doing great. You're the healthiest you've ever been,
except for
as evidenced by the epic treadmill pop tarts.
Vitamin D.
Except for, but whatever.
Who cares?
What do you even need your bones for?
Yeah.
Who uses their bones?
I'm sturdy enough.
Not me. Yeah. I just mental toughness, man. I just stay hard without bones.
What do you think about Leadville? Are you preparing yet? Are you starting to think about the path to this race? Is in August.
Mm-hmm. So I have a little time. Not close. No, it's not that close. But I'm training in a focused way for this time of year. I'm not like obsessing. I'm taking advantage of the time. I frequently visualize different parts of the course when I'm training as a way to just like have fun and stay motivated. And I'm also signed up for the Silver Rush 50 in July. So that's going to be kind of my big ramp up. So, and like a lot of things that I would normally do or that I will do to prepare, it's just like not time yet, but I'm running about 75 miles a week, this winter, which feels amazing. I feel like I'm recovering well. I feel like I'm building some great speed and economy. I did a lot of mountain races last year. I got my first Hard Rock qualifier. I did San Juan Summer Solstice. I did Never Summer. And I'm really switching my mentality to a more running focused race. I think the thing that messes a lot of folks up with Leadville is how freaking runnable it is and how much that smashes you up. Just
we
like
just
Western
talking
States.
With our buddy Luke on Thursday night about, he was like, wow, I can't believe how like crushed my legs were by mile 35. And I was like, oh, I felt the same way. Like it's so much running.
It's a lot of running. Which I love. I love running. So I'm, just really trying to build fitness and economy this time of year. And also I think that I raced a lot last year and sort of found my growth edge there. And this year I'm just going to take a different approach and leave a little more empty, like instead of, and like, I don't think I did anything wrong last year. I'm just going to do something different this year and see how that feels and race less.
Yeah. And I think that's a good fit for you just based on how
Life.
much you're doing in life. You
Yeah.
know, like what we're recording this at 5:30 on a Friday night when, you know, a
Woo!
lot of people would be on the couch resting. And yes, I love the couch and rest. It's my favorite pastime. But at the same time, you know, we got to respect the life stress. You know, if
Yes.
you're racing all the time, you're amplifying your stress considerably. And then you have to ask yourself, are you going to be able to recover?
Right.
Do you have the mental capacity to get on that start line and go deep? These are important questions that I think we got some answers to a little bit last year.
Oh, yeah.
Because you raced, I think you over raced
I think I
last
over-raced.
year.
Well, yeah, I over-raced given the context of my life stress.
Totally. Like if you weren't working, that was
It
the
would be
perfect
the right amount of racing. Yeah.
Right. That's not the case.
Yeah, if anyone wants to be my patron so that I can just run full time, let me know. Seems unlikely to happen in my current state. But you know, I think that and I'm also just like doing a lot better with life stress. I feel like I've learned and grown a lot there. And just really trying to take care of myself so that I can absorb the training I'm throwing at myself now. And I sort of feel like maybe what I'm doing in training right now isn't crazy impressive. I'm doing twice a week doubles. I'm doing a workout a week, a long run. I just feel healthy and consistent. And it may not be like super flashy or like special or like, you know, sometimes I feel like this time of year when you see everyone lining up to run Black Canyons, I'm like, wow, is it bad that I'm not peaking in February? And I have to remind myself that like, no, like this is like, I'm committed to my path. I'm committed to my race season. I mean, mentally, I don't feel that stoked to race like right this second.
Yeah.
And I know that trusting that feeling and trusting my training right now, when the time does come to race, I'll be hungry for it. And that'll put me in a better competitive position.
Totally. I think so too, right? Like there's nothing worse than forcing a race, getting to that start line and being like, what the hell am I thinking?
Or getting to mile 40 and being like, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we all kind of need to have those experiences, those little reckoning moments to kind of check ourselves though and ask ourselves like, why are we doing this?
Right. Yeah. And
what's
like
the purpose behind this?
You know, as a coach, like I really want to try to save people from making big mistakes as much as possible, but also sometimes you got to make a really big mistake to learn, you know?
Absolutely. I think it's integral.
Yeah.
Integral in the process. Anything you are thinking about with regard to my wonderful and incredible performance?
It was a good performance.
my amazing vomiting performance at the Leadville 100.
Yeah. Puke and rally. That's a skill. I've actually never thrown up during a race.
Yeah, that's
so
cool.
Just a crazy fact about me.
That's wild.
It's wild, dude. Yeah. Many other things have come out of me, but not vomit yet. So there's that. Just a little tasty preview into the life of running as Zoë Rom. No, I think that, focusing on, you did a lot of specific downhill training. I'm going to do that. A lot of running training at altitude. You were going up to Aspen to train on Richmond Ridge, which is at or above 10,000 feet.
Well above
10,000 feet. So I'll be doing, geez. So I'll be doing that when the time comes. And again, like, I think I did a pretty good job of actually, when I did Run Rabbit, I didn't take in I mostly did sport food, but I've been, switching up my nutrition game, and I'm going to continue this summer adding more things to my nutrition arsenal. Looking at you, Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, Pop-Tarts.
I'm a broth girl, # broth girl. Love broth. Can't wait to guzzle some broth this summer.
No broth.
Hot broth summer.
Not see
Get on board. Get on the broth train. Choo
hot
choo.
Broth during a hot race.
Broth train.
Yeah, and I would say something that I felt was effective, but I didn't maybe maximize it as much as I could have for training for Leadville, was the practicing of running very steep descents and then having to run really runnable terrain for a long time. And like, I thought, it's hard to say because like when I started getting nauseous, it made it like pretty much impossible to run like as much as I was trying. But there was still a part of me that was like, maybe you should have trained the shuffle a bit more, that there should have been harder workouts earlier in long runs so you could understand and like know what it feels like to really
run fucked up,
feeling crushed.
Yeah.
It's something that, I hadn't totally experienced before as an athlete, but that's changed. I think that's going to inform the way that I have my higher level athletes look at running hundreds.
Yeah.
And designing specific workouts around that that exact thing, because I think the art of the shuffle, even in a race with super runnable terrain, like actually going back towards Leadville, if your economy sucks, you're gonna suck at that part of the race, and if you can't shuffle, you're gonna suck.
Yeah.
And that's
I feel like I'm a shuffle queen.
Right, you're really good at the shuffle. I'm like, I think the duration of my long runs maybe weren't long enough. And I think I could have like leaned into, more of that.
Yeah. I mean, you also came into the sport from a speedier place. Like you didn't do, I mean, you did, I mean, your first race was a 50 miler, but like you didn't get into hundreds till later. I've been doing hundreds since 2018. So I've shuffled a few miles in my life.
Yeah, well, I'm a much stronger like marathon or 50K
Correct.
athlete.
Yeah.
Just
well, I mean,
physiology, I think.
Yeah. So like just like by the nature of sort of like our entree into this space, like there's a lot of athletes that I would not say let's practice shuffling. I'm not sure if I'm that athlete, but I have a lot of athletes where I'm like, you know what, you're already pretty good at shuffling. We need to build speed and economy.
Sure.
And
totally.
And that's why we coach different people differently.
Yeah, like I'm constantly kind of asking myself, like, can I become more efficient at this point?
Yeah.
Is that an adaptation worth pursuing now?
Well, I mean, you're always pursuing it.
In some way, you're maintaining it, but is it worth pursuing it over other adaptations like the aerobic engine, for example?
Sure, but I mean, no matter what you do, you're becoming more efficient. Like, because it's the least specific adaptation.
Yeah, but I think there's a limit to how efficient you can get. Like, can Kipchoge get any more efficient without using Vaporflies? Like, probably not.
No, but I mean, like, I like for folks at our end of the sport, again, like there's not a thing you can do while running that's going to make you, I guess if you only ran at VO2 max, I know you still would get more efficient. Like there's just nothing you can do that doesn't also help efficiency. Like all training helps efficiency to varying degrees. It doesn't all focus on, it doesn't all prioritize efficiency, but everything you do.
I see your perspective on that. I think that there's a ceiling probably where like if you're focused
but it's
on
like
that,
right. I'm definitely not saying you focus only on it. It's just like you can't avoid improving it.
So with that in mind, let's talk about like how to improve next level as an athlete, because these are the kind of things that you have to start thinking about. And although I don't know if we're going to get into too much of that, it's good to have that lens when looking at all of this. You kind of described to me earlier when we were chatting about the content of this episode that you kind of view training in like a pyramidal fashion,
like a prioritization of training needs. And the foundation is things that you can't do without for like any amount of time.
Right. That you just won't.
You're not going to get
succeed
anywhere
at all if you can't master these
in any way. And I would say the foundation, and those are the can't do withouts: consistency, good fueling, and sleep. So it's just and it's sort of like that pyramid, and it's like if you distill that layer of the pyramid down to its essence, it's stress plus rest equals adaptation. If you're not getting enough stress and you're not getting enough rest, you're not going to get any adaptation. So those are the things that, like, if your life is a Jenga tower, you cannot remove fueling, you cannot remove sleep, you cannot remove consistency.
Do you think at the foundation that means fueling your long runs, fueling workouts when they're
sufficient
longer?
Fueling?
Okay.
Yeah.
Like getting the basics,
correct,
the basic understanding of that, like 300 calories an hour, knowing how much sodium you're getting in per hour, how much fluid you need per hour, the basics.
Because like, again, like we've seen, particularly in studies that look at women with in-day energy deficits of only 200 to 300 calories dramatically increase your injury risk.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
So that's like an acute injury risk. And if you're, and it's like, I was always like, I feel like the garbage diet culture thing, I was always fed that I think you can understand from a better perspective is like, you can't out train a bad diet. I would say you can, like, and that's true. Like but I would twist it. And it's not just like about like moralizing around junk food or whatever, or like certain types of food. If you're not eating enough, there is nothing you can do in training that will make you better if you are not fueling enough. Sure, some folks might be able to get away with it for just enough time to develop some negative habits or tendencies there. But if you're not fueling your runs, if you're not fueling your recovery, you are not going to adapt to the training.
And let's just be specific. Carbs and protein. Healthy amount of fats.
Correct.
Having a balanced diet.
Eating enough. And eating, fueling after your runs, fueling during your runs.
All right, what's in the middle of the pyramid?
So this is stuff you can get away with, but you're not going to reach your potential without doing. So you're not going to die if you don't do this stuff. You can likely keep training, but you're probably not going to reach your potential without nailing these things.
What's at the top of the pyramid?
So those are things that you can probably do. You might be able to do without.
Like you could reach your potential possibly.
You could probably, you might be able to reach your potential.
It's kind of the hacky side of things.
Maybe. I wouldn't say even hacky. I would just say finessing. And these are things like don't even worry about it until you're like really nailing the foundations.
And the middle.
The middle.
Bottom and the middle, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like order of importance. And I think that each layer supports the subsequent layer.
Talk to me about the middle.
So the middle is things like building mental toughness and mental performance. Mental toughness is a skill. Mental performance is a skill, you know, like no one is born. I mean, we all come into this world probably about the same amount of mental tough. Some of us are given conditions throughout our life to help us flex that muscle. Some of us have to really intentionally seek out the conditions that help us flex that muscle. So like I always used to be worried I wasn't a particularly mentally tough person. Then I worked with a mental performance expert who was like, doesn't matter what you think you are. Like this is 100% trainable, you know?
Right.
It's like no one's born fit. You get fit by doing fitness stuff. I don't care how tough you are now. What are you doing toughness stuff? You know, that's the question you should be asking.
Let's talk about that for a second. I think that's worth investigating.
Yeah.
You know,
how do you build your mental toughness? How do you think about intentionally doing that?
There's a few things that I do. You know, I think one is the bread and butter, doing things that are hard.
Yeah.
That's the best way to increase yourself. We're
Yeah.
talking about self-efficacy here.
Self-efficacy
basically.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. What that is your belief in doing and your ability to do
Right.
things that are hard. So how do you do that? You take a stab at things that are difficult. And over time, you increase the difficulty of those things. Workouts for runners are like a perfect example of that, right? Like a lot of workouts typically build in toughness over the course of a build. I've never been one of those coaches who agrees with putting the hardest stuff earlier in a build. I've never understood. I've understood the theory behind it, but I don't understand the practical application of giving people the most difficult work early on. Yeah, when they're fresh, it's great, but they haven't developed the mental tools and the experience first to be able to then grapple with the challenge in front of them. So ramping that up, you know, over time is what helps athletes build trust in their ability to handle the demands of these workouts. And that is backed by a lot of research in the field of psychology. Your belief in your ability to handle things that are hard dramatically increases the outcome for you being in your favor.
Yeah.
And so if you get stuck with these really difficult workouts right away and you don't have any self-efficacy because naturally you haven't done things this hard before, you're going to have your outlook on your ability to handle that stress is going to directly affect how much you get out of those workouts. So, you know, there's a lot of different ways to look at this stuff, but I think workouts, long runs, you know, the higher stress parts of the training week are going to be the bread and butter.
Right.
And then if you want to take that to another level, say like you're comfortable with that, you've been training with the coach for 5-6 years.
You don't find yourself quitting workouts. You don't find yourself stopping during long runs.
Right. And that doesn't mean you don't have thoughts about quitting or
we all have thoughts about quitting,
you know, self-talk out there, but it's also like, that's a natural part of this process. But you know, you're not DNFing your workouts. Like you're pushing through, you're staying on your growth edge in those moments. You're really flirting with that. I would say the next part of that is to start to conjure up in your workouts hard, challenging self-talk and scenarios that mimic what you might find in difficult situations in races, and then ask yourself.
So like intentionally telling yourself like, my legs are tired or like my stomach feels bad.
Yeah, absolutely. go to the things that are most challenging for you, use your experience to develop an understanding of like, when are my thoughts most challenging?
Mm-hmm.
When do I have thoughts that don't serve the outcome that I'm looking to have out here? Okay, it's in these scenarios. Let me put myself in those positions.
Yeah.
In some effect in training, and also in visualization is very helpful, because then you can start to like automate your response to that. You get very used to using specific language in those moments. And then when that, hopefully it doesn't happen in the race, but if it does, you have a game plan for dealing with that. I think that I worked with a mental performance coach, not me personally. I coached him years ago now. Great guy. He taught me this technique, and I think it's been really helpful for me, because I had challenges and self-doubt at points in my journey around, can I do hard things?
Mm-hmm.
And practicing that very specifically in my training has made a difference. But I think for athletes, in general, when we're talking about mental performance and mental toughness, like, we're coaching for the physiological changes. We're also coaching for the mental performance changes and increases too, because the two go hand in hand. You can't reach your potential if you leave the mental game out of it completely. I think there's 5 things that athletes you don't have to work with a mental performance coach to get an understanding of, but if you're having specific things that maybe you want to address, specific limitations that you're having trouble with self-coaching yourself or working with you like an actual coach on, like, if you want to go to that next level, do it. But I think there's 5 key things that like every coach should be able to teach their athletes, or every athlete should be able to learn on their own. And I think the first one is self-regulation. So trying
Self-soothing?
Not really. It's a little bit like self-soothing, right? Like, it's kind of your inner, it's kind of like how you talk to yourself in hard moments. How do you regulate your nervous system?
Self-soothing.
There's a mindfulness piece to this, and an awareness piece to this that's really important. I think the second thing is cognitive restructuring. This is super important for athletes. I call it flipping thoughts. I think that's a really easy way to understand this. Like, I'm thinking this. What is the opposite thought that I can create from this situation that serves the outcome I want to create?
Like, this workout is too hard.
This workout
is the correct amount of hard.
Right. Or this workout's too hard for me. And being like, I have the experience to handle this workout. Or
I can't do this becomes I can do this.
Yeah. Or you can flip that into a way that at least gives you some curiosity around what you're capable of. Because there's a lot of research to back that if you can be curious, that's going to help to set you up for better outcomes. And because our feelings are linked to our emotional state, and our emotions are pretty like kind of hard to like shift in a moment, but we can shift the way we think about our emotions.
Gotcha.
We can shift the way.
So it's like surfing the wave.
Right. Exactly.
Wave's going to come.
Right.
We're going to be on it.
Right. Like, pre-race nerves is a great way to look at this. It's like, does this mean I'm nervous and I can't do this? Or is this a sign that my body's preparing for something I care about deeply?
Gotcha. Or like, this feels really, really hard. Does that mean I can't do it? Or does that mean I'm applying the pressure I need to grow?
Totally. Yeah. And I think there's a degree of this that as an athlete you learn over time, but also you can't change anything you're not aware of. And you also can't implement tools that you are unaware of having. And most folks are already in their lives using these things to their advantage, and they just don't know it yet. So like, that middle part of the pyramid is developing that awareness around this stuff, whether it's like limiting self-talk when that comes up, and then flipping those thoughts to, ideally work to change your emotional state in those moments, or to lower your state of arousal, or raise your state of arousal to a place where it's more helpful for performance. I think, starting to address those things is really, really key. Obviously there's visualization or mental rehearsal. That's another tool that athletes can start to use to go over some of these scenarios before they happen. So you can start to rehearse these things. And the power of mental rehearsal is that you access the same neural pathways when you're visualizing as you actually do when you're like physically in the moment doing the thing. So it's really, really powerful way to prepare for performance, to prepare for things that are challenging. You can spend time visualizing in as much detail as you can what you're about to embark on, and then how you're going to respond to those challenges.
Cool.
Other thing is self-talk. Already talked a little bit about that, but creating a supportive dialogue that you have going on inside your head.
What's something that you frequently reach for
in
your self-talk?
I reach for a lot of affirmations. I feel like reminders of who I want to be in hard moments. And I particularly pinpoint the moments where I need those most and train for those moments. Because where you integrate the self-talk is really, really key to how effective it is. So I like to find those moments where I know I'll be, historically I've been in self-doubt, or historically I've been in judgment or evaluation, things that I know don't serve me in the way that I want to be, in the way that I want to be in hard moments, in the way that I want to perform. And I'll pinpoint, and I'll use that kind of flipping technique to, this is the thought that usually comes up, and this is the thought that I want to have if I have that thought. Or in those moments, this is what I want to go to before I even have that thought. That's a very powerful tool. And then lastly, I think effective goal setting is something that athletes in the middle of the pyramid, you've mastered the stuff at the foundation. Now getting clear about what goals are right for you. Because I love the idea of like seeking flow as an athlete and all the positive feelings that come from that. And the way that we can access that is by setting goals that are just challenging enough that we are a good match for the current skill set that we have. So proper goal setting is really key. If you're leaping a lot in your goals, likely a lot of these other things that we've talked about already are going to break down.
Right. Cool.
Yeah. That's my spiel, because I love the mental side.
Right.
I feel like you can't have the physical side without the mental side.
No,
if you're pushing performance.
You're not just a pair of legs out there.
No. Talk to me a little bit about strategic strength training, because I think this is the next level from the foundation.
Yes, and that's not to say that it's like unimportant by any means. I just think it's not the same amount of important as sleep. So, I think this is something that like we see on like two extreme sides of the spectrum. We have the person that like never ever strength trains. That's not that great. And then I have the person who is like wants to get into Olympic lifting while they PR their 50K. And those goals are not very supportive of each other.
Right.
I think that something that runners should be really focused on is strategic strength training. So, we'll see athletes try to do things. They're like, well, I want to go to a squats class with my friend. And I'm like, that's great. That is not supportive of your running goals. And there is a way to engage with strength training in a way that does further your running goals, but it needs to be done intentionally and thoughtfully in concert with your training. So thinking about not trying to build speed at the same time you're upping your weights or whatever, and not trying to do hours and hours in the gym working on like complex lifts and lifting heavy stuff without the guidance of a strength coach. I think that, and again, like I'm not here to give specific advice. Like when I say strategic strength training, what I mean is XYZ. I'm not here to be prescriptive, other than that if this is something you want to do, you got to work with an expert.
Right. Like I think it's like knowing what to integrate when.
Correct. Yeah. And don't expect like doing something like body pump or a bar class to be all that conducive for your running, because running is a very specific activity. Like playing a bunch of pickleball isn't going to make you that much better at running. Can't even make you worse. And, I'll see a lot of athletes who will slow down when they incorporate unintentional strength training because they're not working on like single leg sort of functional movement patterns. And they're getting sore and they're getting tired and they're getting injured. So I think that, again, like as much as I wish I could look at everyone who's listening to this podcast right now schedule and tell them exactly when to do this stuff, if it's something you actually want to do correctly, it's worth recruiting someone to your team.
Yeah, I would agree, right? Like offload that to a true expert. I think as running coaches, we have a degree of insight into what strength work generally helps athletes stay healthy. It can help them actually improve their running economy. It can help
address
them
imbalances.
right, improve uphill strength and
Mm-hmm.
certain specific things. But there's a certain limit to that,
Mm-hmm.
where working with somebody who can really be with you in the present or be very good with you virtually
Mm-hmm.
to see exactly what you need for your individual kind of like physiology, there's no real substitute for that. I think that's
No.
why we've both reached, have
We both have
gone
strength
to
folks on our
strength
team.
coaches
Yeah,
when we feel like we really need it to have those
totally.
specific tools.
Exactly. So I just, I would, again, don't do no strength and don't do a shit ton of strength that has nothing to do with running. Those are two things that I will say.
What do you think about like the strategic use of treadmills? I've had a couple of folks
we've had a lot of athletes curious. So
yeah.
this is so like in the context of like in a couple of our group calls, I had an athlete ask if it's better to go run in the mud so slow that you're running 15-minute miles, or if it's better to get on the treadmill. And I was like, no brainer, treadmill every time. Like 15-minute pace is not a run. That's not you're not building a ton of fitness. You're just kind of slogging. Sure, you might be building some mental toughness, but like if you're the type of person who's going to go run in mud that's that gnarly, likely you're like already doing pretty good. And like I think that the most effective use of your time and energy would be to jump on the treadmill and get some good running in. Same goes with snow. Like I've had athletes be like, oh, I feel like such a wimp. There was only 7 inches of snow and I decided
God.
to run on the treadmill. And I'm like, no, that's a good training decision.
Good choice.
I don't think building mental toughness should always come to the detriment of quality training. Because like if you're super mentally tough but you're not in good shape and your economy sucks, congratulations, David Goggins, thanks for listening to the podcast.
Well, right, and I think you actually bring up a really good point here when we're talking about going from, yes, I've got a very good handle here on the fundamentals. How do I take things to the next level? What is in the middle of the pyramid that, it's not possible to reach potential without really diving into quality training.
Making
is a big
small
thing.
decisions each day to have quality training.
Right. And so slogging, to me would be like, okay, this athlete just has a really myopic view on their training. They need to just spend a minute, take a breath, zoom out,
right?
Understand how many long runs will you actually have? How many workouts will you actually have between now and your goal to build that mental toughness? Situations where we can actually say that this is for not only the physiological benefit, proving fitness, getting stronger, getting better on race specific terrain, but it is also for the mental toughness piece.
Exactly.
Like being on, switching to a treadmill and being like, that was too mentally easy. It's like, well, what you did was you kept yourself in a position where you could maintain high quality. Because if every run you do is in the pissing rain, in a snowstorm, you're going to eventually erode your relationship with running because it's just not that fun to do that over
and
and
the
over.
Same with fitness, stress, the same goes for mental stuff as well.
Right.
As stress plus rest equals adaptation. And if all you're throwing at your brain is stress, 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 and no rest, 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 you're not really going to adapt in a meaningful way.
Right.
And I think that it's always like, I always tell people and athletes I work with to find your hard. If hard for you, if it feels very easy for you to go run in a snowstorm, maybe it's worth getting curious about what about the treadmill is so hard and embracing that kind of hard, like there's lots of different like running. Like I like the treadmill. Do I want to do every run on the treadmill? No, I don't. But it can be a tool for building mental toughness as well.
And I think it can be a tool for addressing specific things in training, like
it's so good for building economy and fitness and really getting into specific efforts.
Yeah, I think
and consistent efforts.
Building an understanding of your relative perceived effort, I think, is great on a treadmill. Also, doing tread hills when you have no access to hilly terrain and you've got a hilly race. Like, use the treadmill. Like, just uphill hiking on the treadmill for athletes who don't have access to hilly terrain, but are like, I do need to train for these specific demands of this race. Like, get on a treadmill if you need to. There's nothing wrong with that. in fact, like something I intentionally prescribe to a lot of athletes who don't have access to certain terrain types. So I think we do need to be careful about like how we view the tools that we
Yeah.
have in our arsenal as athletes. You know, what kind of stigma is attached to them, or what kind of judgment or
Right. Yeah.
evaluation are we putting on them?
And the thing with tools is that you use them. It should feel like you are intentionally using something for a purpose.
Right.
The purpose should you should just be intentional and thoughtful and purposeful about these things.
So I think that you put something in the outline that I think is gonna, I don't know how people will perceive this.
Yeah.
But I think for me, you wrote ditching alcohol is important.
I actually suggested the note be limiting.
Oh, excuse me.
Limiting alcohol.
Okay, I'll take claim to that. Ditching alcohol could possibly be something that you want to focus on if you're interested.
I'm going to ask a vulnerable question.
Yeah.
How do you talk to athletes about this? Like, what kind of conversations are you having with folks you work with?
I have to be honest. I don't have any. That's not true, actually. I do have an athlete or two who have confided in me about the role alcohol plays in their life.
Yeah.
And we've talked very candidly about the negative impacts of that to performance. But I don't assign my value judgment. I ask questions.
Right.
And I walk in the
athlete. That's what I'm asking is like, how do you approach this with folks? Because I don't think it's just useful for me to pop on the mic and say, limit alcohol. Thanks and good night.
Well, I mean, sometimes people need to hear it directly.
Right.
To be honest, that was what I needed to hear when I never had a problem with alcohol. But
I mean, I think actually, so this is something that I've been working with Laura Pence, who's an amazing coach of coaches. And she has talked about like the way maybe our culture says, quote unquote, problem with alcohol. We think of people hitting rock bottom or like showing up to work drunk.
Right.
And she's like, you can have a problem with alcohol well before you reach those points. Because for me, my quote unquote problem with alcohol was like anytime it interrupted my sleep. And like, yeah, like I'm not getting, it's not like disrupting, like I'm still, it's not a problem the way that our culture is trained to think about it, where it like suddenly becomes, oh, it's messy and scary and now it's someone else's problem. It was a problem for me when I got 40 minutes less of sleep than I needed. You know, I realized that's a pretty shallow rock bottom, but I was like, you know what, like I am not at a place in my life where I can accept any self-inflicted problem like this.
Well, yeah, and I can relate to that because, as you know, I don't really drink ever, basically, anymore. I've had, I don't know, one drink in the last, like,
year?
Many months.
Since 2023?
I mean, since my sister's wedding, kind of.
Trying to
or
think.
Whose wedding was that?
I think you had,
but it's been a long time.
You had
a beer the other night.
You had a beer on New Year's Eve?
New Year's Eve. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all of that is to say, like, your relationship to it is very much, you've sort of been there, done that with alcohol.
Yeah, but I think, again, to talk about, like, you know, what your rock bottom is, for example, I think, you know, understanding your relationship to the habits and the routines that you have and asking yourself, do these serve the outcomes I want to create? I'm running a business. I have 8 people who in some way depend on me for their livings.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like waking up at anything less than 95% every single day to come through for the people who depend on me and my athletes and my athleticism and the things that I pursue at a high level, that's anything less than that. That's my standard.
Yeah.
And alcohol puts me well below that because I don't sleep well and I feel very tired the next day. I feel I can't come forward and be who I want to be.
Yeah.
And so that's why, you know, basically since 2020, I've like started to like really examine my relationship with it. But I will say on the other side of that, like I was like a casual drinker for a long time before I like had a more like, here's my view on it. I don't think that, like, my personal view is like, I don't think this is good for people, but use it at your own, you know.
Well, I mean, increasingly medical professionals are saying like, whoa, like what we used to say was like okay and healthy, a lot of the literature is seriously reevaluating.
Right.
And our culture just really hasn't caught up a ton. And I think that's something I feel frustrated by. And again, like my prescription isn't like cold turkey tomorrow. I would like to invite people to not wait until it's like a problem and to like maybe like for me, when I think about what it means to embody excellence, it is to not tolerate self-inflicted like knocking myself down a rung in any way, you know. It's the same reason I don't like stay up all night watching YouTube, you know. Like that would be a pretty silly reason to not sleep, as would having, you know, a beer after a stand-up show for me at this current moment.
Yeah.
So I would invite people, just because you feel like you're, I don't know, get it, like I don't know what it feels like to folks if you're getting away with something, or like, oh, this isn't a problem. I would say, like, if you feel that the quality of your runs is impacted in any way, that can be a problem.
I think that's
the problem.
I think that's the key. When I have an athlete who reiterates to me, expresses to me that they've, you know, have some stuff going on with alcohol or any substance, really, I use motivational interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
I ask them, you know, questions about
it.
The point is, before you interrupt, the point is that when you ask the questions, people come to their own conclusions about the role these things play in their lives. And I like to ask specific questions about what they're trying to create and whether those behaviors support what they're trying to create or not. Because that's what's present for us. That plays a huge role in our decision making. And I got to tell you, back when I worked in the restaurants, and Microcosm I was, you know, involved in my professional athletic career and supplementing my income through working in hospitality. A ritual for us was to go out and have beers after work. And it was easy in those times for me to have for one beer to be 2 or 3, and then to have some pretty less than ideal training the next day. And I remember one particular night where it was not 3 drinks that I had. It was many more than that. And I reiterated to my coach that, like, I just couldn't do the training today because, like, I couldn't show up the way I wanted because I felt like shitty. I was like up until 1 a.m. drinking after work. And he was like, he gave me like a 1-sentence response. He's like, you need to start behaving like a professional athlete. That was it. That was all he gave me, you know. And and I respond very well to a very direct coaching
well, because he's not telling you what to and to not do. It's not a specific prescription.
I knew what he said.
Exactly. Right. But like, I think that's powerful.
Super powerful, you know. And I think, like, at that time, you know, I still have the same coach, but I think, you know, he also has influenced me in my take on alcohol, because that like got me to fall in line. And like, I know I never did that again. But at the same time, I did not stop drinking.
Right. Yeah. I think for me, like, the key distinction I wanted to make was that it's not like, I'm not speaking to folks that have like actual concerns around substance use. That's very specific and serious. And yes, talk with your coach, and then talk with other professionals like that. Address that with a full team of experts. I'm talking to folks who are nowhere near what would be considered or recognized as substance use, substance use and abuse. I'm talking like of folks like me who were casual drinkers, who, like, again, like, weren't, you know, I'm not having more than like 2 drinks really ever, but like, I can't even have a drink without it negatively impacting how I show up in my training and in my life. And so I just wanted to vulnerably and candidly state that and invite people. Because again, I feel like so many of the discussions I hear, like, well, I wasn't an alcoholic. And it's like, well, I wasn't anywhere near, like,
I know. I feel like I was like almost, I didn't have a problem.
Exactly. Because like, it's something we feel so defensive around.
Of course,
and I think it pushes people to 2 corners of like, the problem isn't people, the problem is the substance, and it's very hard to interact with it in a non-problematic way because of the nature of the substance. And I would invite people who are nowhere near overuse or abuse to investigate how the substance shows up in their lives, because there might be less room for it than they originally thought.
Zooming out, I think from a coaching perspective, this brings up two important things that happen when you have ascended to the middle of this pyramid.
Right.
It builds up, it talks about specifically what are your habits and routines.
Yeah.
This is in this part of the pyramid, you're really starting to think about what are the things that I'm doing that are supporting the vision I have for myself, or the outcomes I want to create, who I want to become as an athlete or a person.
Yeah.
And you're starting to take, stock of that, and like, okay, I might need to let go of this thing. Could be alcohol, could be something else. It could be tons of different things, but it's starting to fundamentally build awareness around what supports me and what is not supporting me.
Right.
How do I respond in these moments? How do I feel in these moments? And building a deep understanding, an inside out perspective about who you are as an athlete. A lot of the foundation at the beginning of the process is like, I'm getting fitter. Mm-hmm. I'm eating well. I'm sleeping. Like, I'm getting fitter. I'm eating well. I'm sleeping well. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you have to kind of step inside and look at, okay, what is actually allowing these things to happen? It's these habits, it's these routines. This actually is not helpful. How are my performances going? Why am I still in the mid pack? Mm-hmm. Like, is it because I'm not training enough? Likely it's not a training thing.
Yeah.
Likely it's something around mental performance or habit or strength work. Yeah. Like, it's likely it's another layer there. And so in the middle part of this, you're starting to know who you are as a person and understand yourself fundamentally as an athlete. I think that kind of like if we could have a foundation for the middle, it would be something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, like, there's so many things in life we don't have control. Like, some days are just going to be stressed. Like, I'm not 100% in control of my work stress. Like, there are some things that are a little out of my control. I'm not 100% in control. There's a lot of things I can't control, is what I'm saying. I can abso-fucking-lutely control if I drink a beer or not today.
Totally.
So, like, that's a thread I'm going to pull on.
You can usually control what time you go to bed.
I mean, a lot of times, but like, sometimes, like, I don't, like, when I'm driving back from Denver, a lot of times I get back from work at 9 or 9:30 at night.
Right.
So that, and like, sometimes, after driving on I-70 in a snowstorm, I'm not like immediately ready to.
So what's the lesson in that?
What I'm saying is control the controllables, and an easy thing that will save a lot of folks time, money, and heartache is to, alcohol is an easy thing to reduce. That's an immediately easy thing to get rid of.
Totally.
It's easier to do than strength training. It's easier to do than heat training. It's easier to do than working with a nutritionist. And while all of those are great things to do, like agonizing over your carbohydrate and protein timing while you're doing, like 5 drinks a week, that's not going to cut it. That's not going to work.
I would agree, actually.
I know, who wouldn't agree? Like, literally, who wouldn't agree?
Somebody who likes to have those beers.
We all would like to have those beers. I would like to have those beers, but like, the medical evidence and like the evidence of our very lives disputes this. It's just like it's so foundational, you can't out tweak that.
Do you think, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay.
You like being on the spot. You're a spotlight kind of gal.
Oh my God. I'm a Leo.
You're a performer. Everybody knows you do.
I know. Even though like I literally do, like, I get up on stage and make people look at me and listen to me professionally, I still feel like I need to pretend, like, oh my God, I don't want the attention.
Okay. You don't have to have a hot take on this.
Okay,
I'll give you an out. But do you think, alcohol use is at the foundation of that mid level? Not consuming alcohol would be something that if someone was like, should I strength train or give up alcohol? I would say give up alcohol. Okay, but is that a real scenario?
No, but I think it can help people understand where this can be in their hierarchy of needs. And again, it's easy. And if it doesn't feel easy, that's really good information for you.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point.
I think it's pretty foundational. Like, again, like if you're, like, this is not in the use or abuse situation, but there's no amount of strength training and no amount of mental training that can back you out of a corner of under recovery from alcohol.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Again, like
I
this
appreciate
is,
you being in the
I
hot
don't
seat
want,
on this.
yeah, this is not to like, again, I'm not trying to give a rigid prescription. I am trying to invite all of us into this messy, vulnerable space of interrogating something that I think our culture has been a bit slow to interrogate. And we're here with questions, ideas, comments. You know, I know it's a tough one for folks, probably not my most popular take.
I love an unpopular take because we're
But
not
it's
here
also
to
a take.
we're
You've
not here
been
to
living this take for years.
Yeah, but I don't know if you remember, like, I questioned people. I question anybody who goes to extremes on things,
Right.
if they don't have like an actual.
Well, that's why I'm not trying to tell people
substance abuse
to work
issue.
with microcosm, you got to go cold turkey and there's no amount of alcohol. Like what I'm telling people is like, notice how this shows up, interrogate if it could show up less. And I'm just trying to invite people to ask questions and to look at things. I'm not trying to tell people to emulate me by any means, or to emulate you, or to emulate Rich Roll or anyone else on the internet with, you know, a lot more hot takey ideas around this. I just think it's something that folks, it's scary to interrogate, right? Because like there's even this perception that if you're asking the question, it must be a problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really flawed mindset. I think all of us should be asking the question all the time. Otherwise, you're just mindlessly consuming something. Like, hell no. I'm
gonna take that thread. Maybe this is the last thing.
Great.
I think when we automatically go to judgment about certain things that we're examining, it directly indicates, it hits a button in us that whatever we're doing, it's not enough. We're not enough.
Right.
And I think that is the singular most problematic thing about when we look at our habits and routines, whether it's our relationship with alcohol, if we're drinking or not, if it's a beer after a run. You know, we started this conversation off with talking about post-run beers, and when a certain person's way of being is, when someone is asked to examine their way of being, a post-run beer is part of my ritual. It's part of my routine. That's what I do. And you offer an alternative perspective,
Yeah.
that can really hit at somebody's, like, you're questioning who I am. You're questioning what I do, my identity, my self-concept, and I think for a lot of people, the stigma and evaluation comes from like, well, if this is wrong, I'm not enough. I made a mistake. I'm not doing good enough. I failed. I'm a failure. And like, that's why it's so, I could be wrong on this, but that's my general sense.
Yeah, I think just like in general, we're vulnerable.
This cascade of,
yeah, we're vulnerable to the stuff we put in our bodies. You know, it tells profound stories about who we are, how we eat, what our socioeconomic status is, our religion, like all these things. And so, like, it's a lot to untangle. You know, we're mushy gushy beings, and you know, humans have been trying to, you know, change their states of consciousness with stuff they found in the woods for years and years and years. And I'm a proud part of that tradition. But I'd never want to stop asking questions about any of it. And if something feels uncomfortable to me, that's a sign to go towards it, not to back away from it.
Well, hell yeah. I agree. Thanks for listening, guys. If you've got feedback for a future call, questions, you want to dive deep on any of this stuff,
recommendations for a non-alcoholic beer for us to try.
Yeah. Give us a shout, microcosmcoaching@gmail.com, microcosm-coaching.com. We'd love to hear from you guys. Have a great day.